What does it take to look at a broken system, decide you're not waiting for someone else to fix it, and just build something yourself? Our guest today did exactly that. Emiko is the founder of Project Story in Concord, New Hampshire, a grassroots, all-volunteer organization that works directly with immigrant, refugee, and new American youth to make sure they have every opportunity to thrive. We're talking mentorship, academic support, arts, athletics, and leadership development, a full community built around kids who are navigating a new country and a new life, often with very little support around them. Over 100 young people in Concord now have somewhere to belong and someone genuinely in their corner because of her. Today, we're getting into how she built it, what she's learned, and what it really takes to show up for your community when no one's paying you for it. This is Emiko of Project Story. Emiko, visionary, creative voice, founder and director of Project Story. Welcome.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's just jump right in.
Sure, sounds great.
What inspired you to found Project Story in November of 2020? Am I right? Like when
Yes.
the world was sort of teetering.
Yes.
And why Concord, New Hampshire specifically?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Well, actually, it started off, I'll tell the personal story about how we got started. So I have 3 children of my own, and my middle son, his name is Taro. And in first grade, he befriended this boy named Boris, who had just come from Rwanda with his mom and his 2 brothers months before they met. And in first grade, they were inseparable, and it turned into this beautiful friendship. And this boy, Boris, at first grade, was by far the best soccer player I'd ever seen in my life. And I said, so I went to go sign up Taro for his soccer at Parks and Rec. And I said to him, hey, is Boris playing soccer this year? Because Concord is interesting, where Concord, you actually can't access sports in school until grade 6 and higher.
Oh, wow.
So at first grade, this little boy enrolled in school, he had no way to play soccer unless to sign up for Parks and Rec. Yeah. So, oh, hey, is Boris signing up for soccer? No, Mom, he's not signing up for soccer. And I was really taken aback. Why not? Well, Mom, his mom doesn't speak the language. His mom doesn't know how to fill out the form. His mom can't pay the $55. She doesn't have a car to drive him to practice. They don't have the money to get him all the gear that is needed. And it was so in my face that, wow, this family has a lot of barriers just to sign up their little boy for soccer, which clearly he was born to do, right? So that was really troubling to me. But I said, hey, we now know Boris's family. We know his mom. We can help their family. So we helped them sign up for soccer. We helped Boris get to soccer. And that's kind of the beginning of, wait, there are these amazing kids in our community, and they should be able to do the things that everybody else can do, especially developing their talents.
Right.
Especially doing things that they're good at. So that was kind of the beginning of not only that, like, we can help, but it opened my eyes to the barriers that this particular community, and especially the kids, were facing in Concord. So it started with Boris, but what was interesting is Boris also had 2 older brothers, Fred and Frank. And Fred and Frank were at Concord High at the time when they came from Rwanda. And these boys were brilliant, super, super smart boys, super motivated. But they had grown up, born and raised, they grown up their whole life in refugee camps. And so their education was really broken. And a lot of times they had been educated in languages that they didn't understand. And so it was just very different. And they were just craving education. And at Concord High, I love Concord High, but they don't have the resources to help everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
And so here, even the social workers, they have, 200, 300 kids on their caseload. They can't help each individual kid with every need. So even these 2 boys, they really, really wanted to go to a 4-year school. And Concord High and, and everything around them was kind of pushing them towards the tech, a 2-year school, which they could easily get into and transfer, but it wasn't their dream. They saw themselves at these 4-year colleges. So I was like, wait, here's another place where these are some brilliant kids in our community.
Yeah.
They want to achieve a dream, and they might just need a little help getting over the barriers to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So we worked with them to get them tutoring, to help them with scholarships, even to fill out an application these days for college. It's all online.
Yeah.
So if you're not privy to even computer skills and, you can't advance to the next page if you don't have the red asterisks filled out, if you don't know those things, it's very challenging. So we worked with both of these boys for, 2 years pretty much. And both of these boys, I love telling this story because they both ended up with full 4-year scholarships.
It's so
Fred,
amazing.
full year scholarship to UNH.
amazing.
Frank, full 4-year scholarship to SNHU. And now both of them are graduated. They graduated last year. And it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that family was kind of the beginning of this whole idea. And by helping this one family, it really opened my eyes to just the other barriers and so many barriers that they have specifically in Concord to just accessing services, opportunities, resources. Because what ended up happening was because the community is so tight-knit. And when I say community, I talk about, and I don't really like to use labels, but just for our conversation so everybody is kind of on the same wavelength. I use culturally diverse, but more specifically, we're talking about immigrant, refugee, new American families, if they, if they're okay with those terms. So we're talking about a particular population in Concord whose needs weren't being met.
Yeah.
And this community is really tight-knit. So what was interesting is as I was becoming really close with Boris and his family, I was also meeting all these other people from their community and friends and neighbors and cousins. And then it turned into, hey, Charm, my kid doesn't do soccer, but they do basketball. And do you help sign kids up for basketball? And then I had this wonderful, I think he was a sophomore at the time, Lowy. He came to me and he said, I've put together 12 amazing basketball players and we want to sign up and play tournaments, but they're literally $400 each to sign up.
Yeah.
And we can't afford the jerseys because they're like $500.
Yeah.
So can you help our team? So then it was, again, very eye-opening, like, wow, here's another set of barriers that these kids, they clearly can't access, but maybe with a little help, the community can help them. So all of these things started happening at a time when things were really kind of volatile, right, for all of us. And all of the kids were trapped in their houses. They couldn't really do anything. And so we started just doing a pickup soccer on Sunday afternoons at Keach Park. And it was like, hey, if you want to come, great. Doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you have experience. But hey, if you're from the community and you want to come out, come on out. And we started the first week, I think we did it. Boris had some friends there. We had like 5 or 6 kids. We ended up at the end of the summer with we had roughly 40 kids coming out every day to play soccer with us. Yeah. So again, it was just something that the community needed, right? We needed that. And so it kind of all took shape just very organically. So from the sports, then I had a bunch of girls coming to me saying, we don't do soccer or basketball, or we don't want to play with those boys, and that. But we really, really love dance. We really, really would love to do dance. But dance in Concord is super expensive.
Yeah.
There's no transportation assistance whatsoever. You have to have some sort of adult with you to facilitate recitals and practices and costumes and all the logistics. So that we couldn't do.
Right.
So we said, you know what? What we can do, though, is we can start our own dance program within Project Story. So that's what we did. So as the kids come to us with their needs, we try to fulfill and grow to meet their needs.
Yeah.
So what started with a family of 3 has grown into, over the years, we have over 100, I think I logged in, we had over 127 kids right now.
Wow.
And it's even more. Like, I swear, we have 1 or 2 kids joining every week. And I'm thinking, where are these kids all coming from?
Yeah.
But it's just, we have so many kids in our community that literally are either slipping through the cracks or going unnoticed, but they don't have the access to resources and opportunities as other kids in our community have. And so that's kind of the mission. That's part of the mission of Project Story is we need to develop these kids' talents.
Right.
So
Yeah.
STORY is an acronym, Supporting Talents of Rising Youth. That was kind of how this all was born, is we need to, these kids are amazing. We have these amazing kids in our community, and I want people to know that and realize it and help these kids get to where they need to be. So really it became kind of a joint effort. It was, just me volunteering my time, but I can't do it on my own. So then it came down to the kids kind of volunteering and stepping up. Older kids from the community coming out, college kids being like, I love this. I wish this was here when I was younger. What can I do to help? And then they started coaching soccer and coaching basketball and, doing the sound at our shows. And, so and helping with transportation. So it's really like a community driven, organically, made organization, now a nonprofit, you know, and that's so exciting, and the kids are really the ones driving this. The kids are coming to us being like, we really want to learn to swim. Can you organize some sort of swimming lessons for us, And so that is really cool because we don't know what they need. We don't know what they want. And so the fact that they have a place to now come to and say, we're not getting this. Can we get this? Can we make this happen? That's really huge. That they have a safe place to come to and to express themselves. And so in the midst of all developing their talents and getting to know these kids and their families and the many needs that not just they have, but their families have, because remember, coming to this country, they're literally thrown into a world where they don't know the culture, they don't know the language, and they're just expected to function. And so a lot of these kids actually become parentified in a way, and they act as translators, and they're actually helping the family live and survive.
Navigate a new culture.
And so for a lot of these kids, just to have an outlet even to go and let's just relax for 2 hours and run soccer, that's huge, not only for them, for their mental health and their physical health, but even for their family, to just have a safe place for their kid to go to for a couple of hours.
For kids to be kids.
For kids to be kids, exactly. And then as we, developed and as we're starting to really know these kids, we realized that it's actually more than just talents that these kids need developed. But some of these kids we were helping literally didn't have basic needs at home. So they weren't having enough food at home, or they didn't even have sneakers, or, they didn't have things that they needed to basic needs, right? So that's when we said, well, wait, we can't send Boris to soccer if he doesn't have food at home. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So we're going to have to take this on kind of as a holistic approach and really hone in on, we need to help these kids fully, and that's great that we're developing their talents, but we also need to make sure they have food at home and they have clothes and, they're getting what they need. And then, so that's one thing that we started bringing in. And even things like, a lot of people don't realize, but like school vacations or holiday break, that's 2 weeks. And when you're a family or a kid that's used to getting breakfast at school, lunch at school, 2 snacks a day, and a food bag on the weekends, to all of a sudden have that go away for 2 weeks, that is huge. And so those are things that we try to pick up on. We try to make sure that they have food bags during that week and that sort of thing. And even this summer, we actually we coordinate with programs around our town to make sure that we have lunches delivered for the kids during the summer, because that's a time when, again, they don't get the food service from school. So the third piece that we realize that we have to bring in, and this is only about the kids' safety and well-being, but it's the racism piece. And the more that we really started honing in on these kids and the more that they felt safer telling their stories, we realized that unfortunately they are dealing with a lot of racism and discrimination in Concord. And not very many people notice that. And it kind of, you know, they're not the type of kids to necessarily speak up. We don't know if their families even know that they can speak up about these issues or how to do that. And so we had noticed that a lot of these kids were taking their concerns and kind of holding them back or putting them away. And what we started doing is we started just doing, hey, let's just have a group where we can just get together and talk. And our first group literally turned into just like a 3-hour session where kids were just sharing all of the racist experiences that they were getting, like in school, in the community, from their neighbors. I mean, it was really eye-opening, but also very heartbreaking and troubling that these kids were dealing with all of these issues. And there weren't any there are no resources in Concord to help them with these
I
issues.
don't want to gloss over this at all. I think we really need to spend a lot of time with this because, you know, Concord, New Hampshire, I mean, that's everywhere, right? And we're seeing it all the time. And so the fact that these kids now have voices, right, is so important. So can you kind of go into a little bit more detail about that?
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, this was something that the kids really, really felt strongly about. And what was interesting is that first share that happened years ago, now it was almost 4 years ago, I didn't really know what to do because a lot of what they were sharing was happening in their schools. A lot of it in the community too, like the blatant racism, calling them names out in public, that sort of thing. But what was more troubling though too is like in a school, which was, you think, a controlled environment where the adults would at least be aware to not use discriminatory language and that kids that were using it would be held accountable. However, after talking to the kids and hearing their stories, that clearly was not the case. And so I wrote up a document. I took it to a superintendent at the time. And it was taken seriously. The school district did put things into place. They hired, they called him at the time a DEI coordinator. He was working for the district for a year. They had him as an administrator. I thought he was wonderful, and he was at least a resource for the kids to go to. Because a lot of the things that the kids were telling me, I would be like, did you tell someone?
Yeah.
And I would get so much response of, well, I don't know who to tell.
Yeah, there's no one to tell.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, what about a guidance counselor? I'm not going to go tell that white lady something. That's exactly what they would say to me. I'm not going to go tell the white lady that because she's either not going to do anything or she's not going to understand.
And she hasn't been trained for that.
And
She's
she-
been trained
exactly.
to get people the credits that they need to graduate. She
Right.
hasn't been trained to deal with the deep nuances of this kind of systemic issue.
Exactly. So the kids were just kind of left with nowhere to turn. So hiring this person was fantastic. They at least had a resource, and he was great. Unfortunately, he's not there anymore. The school district didn't feel the need to have his position back. I'm not really sure. But in any case, this issue is a very, very very real issue for a lot of the kids and a very troubling issue. And they're still reporting to me that they face discrimination on a daily basis. So let me just give you some examples so that we know just how intense it may be for some of those kids. Like, we can never fully know because we're not them, but they have been called the N-word literally by teachers, staff members in the school district. I personally was a witness to one time. I witnessed a teacher use that literally say that word in reference to some black child in the room. This is very real. At the same time, we have kids that are using, calling them the N-word, saying other names, sending them things on social media like you're a cotton picker, things like that, to that nature, racial slurs. And even for some of these kids, maybe those who had just come to the United States, they might not even be privy to some of the things that they're being called or some of the, you know, so it's even more upsetting, you know, and so the kids decided that obviously something needs to be done. We have talked to the school district. We have gone to the city many times. But let me stick to the school because the city's separate, and I do want to talk about that too. Yeah. But the school district, like I said, they've tried. They've really tried. They've been open-armed. But I do think that a lot of the pushback is about funding. It's always like, well, we'd really like to help you and hire someone else, but, you know, so the school always has funding issues, and that always seems to be the reason. Yeah. But again, I think, you know, there's always a way around that. You know, there's always people that are willing to volunteer. I'll volunteer to go have a training on how teachers shouldn't use the N-word in the classroom or whatever, right? So there's ways around that. But you know, I feel like the kids themselves are seeing a lot of what's going on. And now with Project Story in place, they have a place to go where they can at least bring their concerns, and at least we will hear them. We don't necessarily know what to do, as maybe many people don't, but we can at least then approach it of, let's try to solve this problem. You're not alone. This is super messed up. Let's try to see what we can do to fix this, because this is not okay. You know, so at least they have a place to go with that. And the school we're working on, the new superintendent that has taken over, he has been really, really open-armed. He's even invited us to have a private meeting with him. So again, like, he's willing to hear it, and that's huge, you know, if they're willing to hear it. The city, for the most part, has been pretty open-minded. You know, again, I'm going to talk about some things that we've had some challenges with.
Yeah, sure, please.
On a very general basis, one thing the Project Story kids noticed about 3 years ago was that our city, although we have the days off for Martin Luther King Jr. Day and I believe Juneteenth, our city does absolutely nothing, even though we're the capital city. We do absolutely nothing to celebrate those days. So the project, and it's funny because about 3 years ago, we got about 5 or 6 invitations from different groups in Manchester to attend all their MLK Junior Day festivals. They've got like 20 different things going on that day in the school, in the community, in the museums, everywhere. But it's so strange that Concord has nothing. So our kids were literally like, you know, why don't we have anything? What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. So about 3 years ago, 2 days before, we're like, we'll just have something. We're just going to have something. So we did it in a small classroom at the community center. We're like, let's just have something. And every year now, we hope to have something. We call out the community every year. The Concord Monitor will write a little article about how they always, you know, they say the Concord doesn't do anything. And then last year was our 3rd year in a row when, again, we're the only group in Concord hosting the MLK Day event. So, you know, it's the kids, they've said to me, they're like, that sends a message that, like, our community doesn't care about these days. And it's the Black events. Like, why is it the events for Black people that our community doesn't come out for or come out to celebrate? So that they see that. You know, it's not stated anywhere, but they see that based on our city's actions. Juneteenth is another one, you know, so we started doing that event too, you know. So we just try to do, at least we tried to pick up on those advocacy places where, like, we feel like our city should kind of step up and take a role in that, and they're not. And so we're just going to do it. So that, in a kind of broader sense, we've kind of taken that on. And again, when I say we, it's all the kids. It's all the kids. Even the event we had this year, we ended up having it downtown, and we had a panel discussion, and I think we had maybe close to 10 to 12 speakers from elementary, middle school, high school, and college, all speaking about MLK, obviously, but how it's important to remember his message because they're still dealing with racism today in Concord. And so even at an elementary, we had elementary school kids literally talking about the racism. You know, so that means it's a problem. And that means we have to do something about it. We've actually even been the victims of some kind of blatant racism by specifically the Parks and Rec Department. About 2 years ago, or 2 or 3 summers ago, they had changed the pool rules for Project Story Kids so that the pool rule is every adult can bring 6 kids, but randomly they changed the pool rules for Project Story Kids that our adult staff, like me, myself, I could only bring in 2. So we actually had to get the mayor, the old mayor, to go and get that changed. He got it changed like the very next day. He physically went down to Parks and Rec and got it changed because you just can't do that.
No.
The second time it happened was last summer, and again, it was more kind of, I would say, a passive way.
Yeah, a little bit more covert.
Yeah. And what they ended up doing this year, or last summer, I should say, was definitely more covert. But let me start by telling a little bit about our summer program so you can understand how this comes into play. Every summer is probably the most volatile time for our kids because I mentioned they don't have the school and stuff, but also, too, all the summer camps, they don't offer transportation. You know, it's hard to access things if you don't know the language. Not very many places get things translated. So our kids are really off pretty much by themselves all summer. So we started a summer program where we literally set up at their park right across the street from 10 to 2 every day, Monday through Friday. And we do 10 to 12. We do like academics, tutoring, or leadership. 12 to 12:30, we coordinate with the Community Action Program in Concord to literally, they're amazing. They literally delivered 42 bag lunches to the park every day for our kids. And then we take them swimming at the pool right there. And then that's it. That's all we do. But at least it gives us a time to check in with the kids, you know, and give them a safe space for a couple of hours. So the park last summer heard about our contract with the Community Action Program to have lunches brought to the park. I get an email with a bill. That's a bill for $3,127.50, charging us to sit at the 2 picnic tables in the woods at the park, which, by the way, is not even on, like, it's not even a rentable space. It's not on their rental charts. Like, it's because it's picnic tables. It's public, like, space, right? People don't typically rent out picnic tables. Right. So we sit at 2 picnic tables in the woods, and we got a bill for over $3,000 for renting. This is like, I think they charge $27 an hour to rent the space. And until we paid the bill, they've put a hold on our lunches with the Community Action Program.
Wow.
Yep. And so my president, my board of director president, she emailed them right back being like, you know, we're a 501c3. We are a nonprofit. We're helping kids. We're doing academics. We're sitting at picnic tables.
Providing them food.
And it was still a no.
Wow.
So we then had to go. I actually emailed the entire city council with the whole email chain so that they could see the back and forth. And the mayor. And thankfully, within a week, the city councilors and the mayor and the city manager waived all the fees. So we did get support from a lot of the city. So again, I'm just talking about the pushback from Parks and Rec. But that was an unbelievable, really hurtful type of thing to do. And then, so once we got there, we got in, we're running our first like day. All of a sudden, we're in there in the summer and we're like, where's all our trash cans? The kids are like, Sharm, where do we put our trash? Well, just about a week before, Parks and Rec made a new rule and removed every single trash can from Keach Park. And it is still that way even to this day. And we have asked for trash cans. And there's no water. We've asked for water. And Parks and Rec will not give us a trash can. They just make it very difficult, but not even for us, just for the community. Like, when we would show up at Keach Park on a Monday, there would be trash everywhere from the whole community using the park all weekend.
So what do they want to do? They want to clean the trash up off the ground?
That's exactly what they did. They hired people to walk around with a trash picker and a bucket.
Instead of putting trash cans in the park.
Right. But just like, that makes it harder for us even to run our program, and so it's just.
It takes the focus off of what needs to be.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I don't need to go on and on and on about that, but it is important to talk about, the discrimination and even the passive discrimination that these kids are getting, because I really wholeheartedly believed that if all the kids in our community didn't look the way that they did or weren't from where they were from, I bet you they never would have batted an eye.
Yeah, of course.
And because we are there every single day of the week, I got to see the groups that come every single day. There's a group that came every day, and they would come and sit, and they were great. They were super nice. There was a bunch of them, and every day. So finally, about halfway through, I just went up randomly and I'm like, do you guys ever rent this space or anything? And they just chuckled and they're like, no. This is a park. Why would we rent this space? Right. Every day that group was there. They didn't have to rent a space.
No.
I also noticed that another gentleman would come every day and he would literally be like camping there. We would get there. He would be there in his truck. This lasted all summer. And I never saw anybody go to him or charge him a bill or. So again, it just makes you wonder: were we targeted? Were we,
Sure. Yeah, and I think that the trash can example is actually also a great example to use of how this kind of covert or overt discrimination does end up affecting the entire community. Because I'm sure that there were many residents of Concord who would just like go on a walk in the park. Have their iced coffee cup and be like, why can't I throw this away anywhere?
Right.
And then it really is, once you start to look at the way that the entire city operates as a system, you start to, realize that there actually is quite a deep meaning behind why there are no trash cans in the park.
Right.
And why maybe you as a community member should pay some mind to the community around you. That maybe could be the reason that there are no trash cans in the park.
Right. And, we really do. Like, maybe people aren't aware that there are no trash cans. Because in White's Park, interestingly, they have such expensive, nice trash cans that they're actually built into the ground and they can't remove them. So, interestingly, their new carry-in, carry-out law didn't apply to White's Park. So those types of things are strange in my mind.
I want to ask a couple of questions about you.
Oh, okay, sure.
In addition to Project Story.
Right,
but first of all, I would love to also clarify, does Project Story only serve the community of Concord, or are there surrounding communities that are also participating?
Thank you. That's a really good question. Yeah, right now we only serve Concord.
Okay.
Yep. A couple, maybe three of our kids have moved to Pennacook. But again, we still serve them because it's close. Yeah. And a lot of times Pennacook is considered Concord, so we still have them with us.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I'm wondering about you and about your background coming into Project Story, because part of what I find very moving about Project Story is that I think it's a really great example of the power of a small, more rural community like this, the power that they have to stand up for each other and to advocate for each other. So first of all, did you grow up in New Hampshire? Did you grow up here?
Yes, actually I did, and I actually went to school in Concord. So I went to all the Concord schools.
Okay.
I came to Concord when I was 6, so yeah, I pretty much grew up here. For college, I went away to Massachusetts, to UMass Amherst, so I was in Western Mass. But then I came back to Concord.
Okay, great. So I'm curious I would love to know a little bit about, because I'm also just so moved by your spirit and the way that I really am. And the way that you've committed yourself so wholeheartedly to this kind of advocacy, because it's like we're just saying, I think like the kind of work that you're doing is speaks to me that you have a very empathetic heart, and I think the kind that we need in a close-knit community like this to really bolster each other. So I'm curious about what it is you think that drove you to this work, if there's something that you witnessed or someone in the Concord community or something about the Concord community that you grew up in that inspired this. Obviously, the kind of origin story of Project Story is also about your son. So I'm curious, you know, is it something about motherhood that brings you to this kind of community advocacy as your kind of major commitment? I would love to know, like, where that's coming from for you.
Sure. So I think, I think my whole drive and mindset really came from my family. So I like to just talk about my family a little bit. My dad is half Japanese and was born and raised in Japan. And he did not actually come to the United States until he was 18. And so growing up, I grew up with my grandmother to his mother. So I knew her, and her culture was very much part of our life. And my dad, my dad's fluent in Japanese, and, he brought that with him. So even growing up, Japanese culture has always been part of my life. So my dad also is half Native American. So he looks very interesting. He has a very interesting look, but he definitely doesn't look white. So I remember growing up in Concord, which was very, very white, growing up and my friends always being like, is your dad Indian? Why does your dad look like that? Always asking me questions about my dad's appearance. And then when I was 12, my family adopted a little girl from Japan. So I've grown up with my sister who's full 100% Japanese. So we always got looks going where we always had questions asked about our family, or you two can't really be sisters. One of you must be adopted. And our joke was always like, well, one of us is, but we always forget which one. Because in our mind, we were just family, right? So I think that was a lot of how I grew up, was it doesn't matter what we look like or where we come from. We're family, and that's what's important. And we're going to help and always be there for each other no matter what. So I think with my son and with Boris and his family, we became so close to them that it turned into my family, and so his mom was my sister, and so those kids were my family now, and so I think that's kind of the mentality that drives me, is this is my family, this is my community, but it's also my family. And if you think about it like that, you always want to help your family, right? You want to see them succeed. You want to help them wherever you can. And so I think that's kind of what drives me, is I look at these kids they're my family, and even though their families come from other countries, they're still my family now that they're here in my community, And so if we all kind of think like that, we can all kind of really help each other out.
Totally. Yeah, that's such a beautiful answer, because I think it is all, I mean, we are all so much more connected than I think a lot of the modern world kind of allows us to think that we are. Right. So I love that answer. Thank you so much for sharing
thank you.
Yeah.
And interestingly, too, just to tell a little bit more, I studied, I changed my major, but I went into college majoring in Japanese. I was like, this is it. I'm going to do this for my major and everything. Halfway through, I ended up changing to sociology randomly. And it was almost like I had a calling to it, but it was very interesting because now I look at what I'm doing now. And I think that sociological brain really helped open my eyes to what our society represents in Concord. So that also plays a piece in kind of how, because it was wow, my family isn't getting what they need because of this, and this systemically. How can we change the systems to get people to where they need to be? So
totally.
And I think it's so empowering and inspiring for people too, because a lot of people, if they want to start something, they don't know how to start, right? And so to hear your story and to hear this, this one need I mean, it started with one
Yeah.
need, and now
Yeah.
it's like expanded into this beautiful community and this family that you now have.
Yes.
And now you're dealing with other issues that you're trying, and it's like one step at a time.
Yeah. Right.
And I find that
Exactly.
so incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
oftentimes people are like, with anything in life, it's just like, I don't know how to start. I'm
Yeah.
frozen.
Right.
And you just have to pick that one thing, and it just will, like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
calling will just
Right.
drive
Yeah.
you towards something.
Exactly.
You know, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
When you started this,
Yes.
and to what it is now,
Yes.
where do you foresee this going?
Love that
I
question.
know. Me too. Well, I would love, the ultimate dream would be to have, if you think of, I like to think of the citywide community center right in Concord. Like, I know that's Parks and Recs and whatever in the city community center, but something that's very similar to that. Ideally, Project Story would have a giant home called like the Empowerment Center, and it would be a giant building like the community center where it would have classrooms and a gymnasium and dance studios and an auditorium and a kitchen and a little office area. That would be ideal because it would also have the soccer courts outside and the basketball courts outside and a park for the kids to run on. So in a place like to have something like that would be ideal, and which is so what the community needs. And, you know, throw in a couple buses and we are good to go like forever. And what's so cool is, you know, and one thing that we kind of built into our vision and our mission was that if we can kind of help these kids and work with these kids now and train these kids in leadership and make them feel safe and confident in their own skin, they can then take on these leadership roles in Concord, whether it be maybe they're the head banker or maybe they're the head soccer coach or maybe they're the next mayor. Like, we don't know. But if we can kind of facilitate that leadership empowerment mentality, then that can also help Project Story be sustainable, because they can come and lead this. You know, they can come and be the coaches and the leaders.
And it can help Concord be sustainable because,
Exactly.
like, as a young person who's grown up in this state, I feel like I'm constantly hearing the conversation about how young people don't stay here.
Right.
And I think what Project Story and your whole story and journey demonstrate is it brings up a question of, like, why young people would stay here if the community hasn't invested in them.
Right.
Why would young people who are able to leave and get these leadership skills, why, you know, what is calling them to come back and invest in their community if that's not how they were raised by their community? So I think that's such a beautiful vision of, like, reciprocity too.
Exactly.
That I think is really lovely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And on reciprocity, I think another thing that really speaks to me about Project Story's journey and kind of mindset is I love this idea of being a space where the kids come and tell you their needs rather than an assumed need that you're trying to fill. You act as kind of almost a little bit of a blank slate where the kids are coming to you and expressing their needs, and you're finding a way to make it happen. And I think it's also, you know, that transitions us also into talking about other parts of the community that have done that for Project Story.
Yes.
So we're here in the Bank of New Hampshire stage, which is an extension of the Capitol Center for the Arts. Can you talk a little bit about your partnership with them?
Sure. They've actually been huge and very instrumental in where we're at. From the beginning, you know, they've opened up their doors as far as letting us use their stage. So we have a couple shows every year, and they literally let us use the main stage, which is huge for the kids to just be able to come into a really professional stage, a professional setting like that. But also, too, more importantly, they give us free space. So Project Story right now, and we never had a designated space. And that became really difficult as we started, you know, we said, ooh, these kids really need a library that has characters that look like them. But we need a place to house our books. You know, it became, we needed space. And the Capitol Center really stepped up. They opened up their doors and they said, we have a big space in our attic. It's a giant room. You can have it. There's closets. We'll give it to you for rent rent free. And so that's been huge for us, just to have a space. And for the kids, it's a safe space. You know, they look at the Capitol Center, they know the Capitol Center is supportive of them. They feel safe walking into the Cap Center.
Yeah.
They feel safe walking into the Bank of New Hampshire stage. I'm not sure all of them feel safe walking into the community center at Parks and Rec, right across the street from their house. So that really says a lot about the Capitol Center, though, for setting that precedence of we can be welcoming to the community, and it's really not difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think both your origin story and in now this extended version of the Capitol Center opening their doors to you, it's also, you know, it starts with the one need and then the one share. Like, it's just a one resource share, right? So for you, it was, let me help you fill out the form and maybe give you part of the $55. For the Capitol Center, on a larger scale, it's just, let's open our doors, right? It really can be that simple.
It's that simple in the beginning, right?
It is.
And then you can dream. That gives you space to dream big.
Right.
And it's so exciting.
And honestly, that's pretty much how Project Story got to where we are, is from all the help from the community. Because I can't do everything by myself. You know, my 5 or 6 high schoolers can't drive everybody around, you know, so it doesn't work. But what does work is if we can get resources and help from the community and we can all work together, then we can make it work.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Speaking about leadership, right? And the leadership that you are cultivating within Project Story, has there been anybody that has come back to be a leader? Like from, you know, who started younger and is now back?
Okay, yeah. Let me give a great example because I love this. And he's not graduated, but this is a good example. So remember I started in the beginning with a boy that came to me that had a basketball team, and he organized all his friends into this basketball team. Well, his name is Lowy, and he was the one who did that. And he was so into this team. He came up with their name as Project Dreams. He designed their shirts. I mean, he's so organized. He has lists of numbers, names, everything. And he started that. So they've done the team for years and whatever. And then this year, he graduated last year. So it was always like, well, you know, now he's at Colby Sawyer. Now you're at Colby Sawyer. So see you later.
Yeah.
But thankfully, it worked out where it was different. He came back and he approached me at the beginning of the year and said, Sharm, I want to coach Project Dreams. I'm coming back and I'm going to be their coach this time.
That's so awesome.
And
That's
so
awesome.
it's amazing because he's organized their jerseys. He's organized. He's already running. He's got them running practice in the snow. I mean, he is so driven and so into this. He's got 12 boys. He's already recruited them. He sent me a list of the 6 tournaments he wants them to sign up for. So that type of leadership thing is really cool because we're seeing that come back.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, one of the coaches from years ago with Project Dreams, he did actually come back and he's on our board of directors. Yes. And so he's now graduated. He's a nurse at Dartmouth. But just to have him come back and be like, I want to help. You know, my schedule's so jammed, but what can I do to help? And so he's on our board of directors, you know, and that's awesome. You know, so that is, again, I love that.
It's great.
It's really amazing.
It's amazing. So what has the journey towards the 501c3 been like for you?
Well, it's been pretty challenging and time consuming. So again, because we're all doing this as volunteer and we all don't have a lot of time, it's just been a very long, arduous haul. But we have, because of volunteers and help from our community members, we have now formed a board. We did, you know, all our bylaws. We did all our paperwork. We submitted all our applications. And we did, finally get our 501c3.
Yeah, great.
So that was really huge because for us, in that time span of not having our 501c3, it's been very, very difficult to get funding. So this entire time, I've been working and everybody else has been working as volunteers. And all the money that we've been making has solely gone into the program for fees or for whatever. And so we really have had no profit whatsoever. We can't even afford to pay staff. So that was always really challenging. We could get smaller grants, but we had to depend on the help of a fiscal sponsor. We had a fiscal sponsor from a while ago. We ended up having to change fiscal sponsors, though, because our first fiscal sponsor, once we started doing the advocacy work about racism and stuff, our first fiscal sponsor didn't feel that it was a good match anymore. So our second fiscal sponsor, which was Queer Lective out of Manchester, they took us on for the last 2 years, and they were really great because through them we were able to get some bigger, better funding, and that had been really helpful. But now, since we got our 501c3, that's been huge. So now we can start to apply for bigger grants and actually get, bigger donations from people that may have been hesitant to donate before. It also adds credibility. We have a great board of directors. We're running things by the book, and everything is accounted for. So, that might give people more of an incentive to donate or help out. But honestly, funding is still our biggest barrier, which I hope with our 501c3 that does change.
Yeah.
So if people are listening, what can they do? What can they do to help you? What can they do to support you?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot people can do to help. First of all, every year we have a talent show, but this year is a special one because at the end of April 29th, we're going to be hosting our 5-year birthday celebration and talent showcase. So that's really exciting. And the kids always put on an amazing show. The kids have all these varied talents that they put on. So we are inviting the community to come out. It's April 29th. It's a Wednesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. right at the Bank of New Hampshire stage. Right here. And it's just an awesome show. And the beginning is going to start off with, a little bit about Project Story and our journey. And that's going to be presented by the kids, of course. And then they're going to have their talent show, which is just fun and great. And so we invite everybody to come out for that. So definitely come to the talent show. We're also looking for sponsors for that event. We need sponsors. So, if your group or your organization or business is interested in sponsoring, please reach out. There's many, many ways to help with that. And then aside from the events, attending our events is always awesome because the kids are always a huge part of it. And it's really important, too, for the kids to see that community members care. Right? And so it's always nice to have a lot of people come. And but aside from our events and coming to our events, we're also looking for people just to share about Project Story. So we're a really new organization and not very many people know about us, surprisingly. I was at an event a while ago, a giant event, and I literally had a community member from Concord say, I didn't even know we had refugees in our town. So, people don't even realize that some of these kids are here. So, just spread the word about Project Story. Let people know that we're around and that people can donate. And we're not just looking for monetary donations. We'll take sports equipment. Maybe we'll take books, depending on what it is. So I think if people want to share whatever it is, that they may have, just reach out. Also one thing that's great, and Katie, you know this, but people can donate time and donate their skills and their talents. For instance, Katie, you came and did an acting workshop with us, which was so fun.
It was so fun.
The kids are still talking about how fun that was.
Let's go. We got to get another one on the books.
But so people can literally, if you have a skill or something that you are willing to come and spend a couple of hours and share some time with our kids, that's awesome. And so there's definitely many ways people can help. Transportation is also another issue that is always an issue for us. So we have a couple of designated drivers that we can reach out to, for rides and stuff for kids, but we're always looking for support. So if people are interested, the best thing to do is just reach out. Send me an email, give me a call, something directly, and then we can set up a meeting and talk from there. So
We'll link everything below
Yes,
so that
we
everybody
will.
has
Yeah,
all
that
that
would be
information.
awesome. Yeah.
Definitely. And especially the
Yeah.
information about the talent show,
yes,
because that's just going to be a good time.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
So
that's
much
going to
fun.
be
exactly.
fun.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, Sharm,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
This was
thank you
truly
so
a
much
really
for
lovely
having
conversation.
me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
really appreciate
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to talk about Project Story and the amazing kids that we have in our community.
Yes, totally.
Definitely.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Keeping It Real, 603 Stories. If you loved today's conversation, be sure to share it with someone who loves the 603 as much as we do.
Follow along for more behind-the-scenes stories from the Granite State's boldest thinkers and doers.
Until next time, stay inspired, stay grounded, and most of all, keep it real.